Hi, everybody. For the World Tennis Conference by GPTCA and Segal Institute, it's a privilege to have one of the greatest coaches on the tour and on the field of the tennis academy is with us, Janko Tipsarevic.
Hi, Fernando. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, to have a brief presentation because we can talk a lot about Janko. We can say that he was a former top 8 ATP player. He was a Davis Cup champion in 2010 and was also finalist of Davis Cup 2013. He is an ATP coach and he is the owner of the Janko Tipsarevic Tennis Academy with several locations around the world. And he is designing and building the Tipsarevic Luxury Tennis Academies, which is a new project he is building in many places. Thank you, Janko.
Passion project. Thank you very much for having me. It's honestly my honor to be here.
Yeah, he will presenting about the player journey from junior to senior and how to establish the culture in a club academy environment. Very important subject to all the coaches which are presenting right now at the World Tennis Conference. Uh, let me ask you, Janko. You were a very important player in terms of the success that you had in your career. Which are the key recommendations for coaches and players when you are traveling, to junior to senior, which is a key transition age?
Uh, I think it's a brilliant question. We spoke about this, Fernando, when we were choosing the topics, and this was something that I was very passionate about and something that I could personally relate to very closely because um, my memory is not generally great, but I remember this period of my professional life very, very clearly. And I remember that for me, this wasn't the funnest period of my life. And I'll give you several examples and reasons why. Over the course of my junior career, I was a pretty decent junior, being number one in Europe under 14 and under 16, being number one in the world under 18, winning the Australian Open. So we can say that I had a decent or a good junior career. The transition to the senior tennis, uh, I wasn't finding myself in a right manner as I should have. Now, when we revert time, I guess all of us, if we have a time machine, we would jump in it, go back in time and change some parts of our personal or professional life. And this is the part that I would have done differently if I knew better at that time. The reason for this was it's irrelevant if we're talking about a successful or an unsuccessful junior. Normally, over the course of your junior career, irrelevantly of your ranking, you're fighting and competing with a certain number of boys, meaning in your age, in your category, under 12, under 14, under 16, and this group of, at that time, kids is generally following you all throughout your path in a junior career, which is lasting for about, I want to say, 4 to 6 years, since you're 12 until you're 18. Uh, the thing that I was struggling with is to accept that I'm suddenly not anymore competing and playing with boys, but rather I'm competing and playing against men. And it's a whole different ballgame. For me, the difficult part personally was because over the last several years of my junior career, I have developed an ego because my results were good. I was thinking that I was a big hotshot and I was just accustomed and used to winning. But over the course of the beginnings of your senior career, you need to essentially get your ass kicked several times or more than several times before you understand the rules of the game. And because of the issues, the psychological issues that I had with my ego that I wasn't accustomed to losing, I wasn't really conducting myself and behaving in a proper manner to give everything I could possibly give towards my progress from the junior until the senior tennis. Essentially, I found my way when I was 20 or 21, met Mr. Dirk Hordov, who actually showed me the way. But this was a very difficult period for me in terms of finding my way. How do I need to conduct myself and behave in order to maximize my potential? There were all different emotions involved in fighting with my fears, insecurities, as I mentioned previously, ego issues and stuff like that. A coach at that time, I was on the brink of continuing or stopping with my junior coach, so I didn't really had proper guidance in terms of how do I need to, again, not even practice and work, because over the course of my career, I was always a hard worker. But just having somebody to guide you through this difficult time is tremendously important. One of the main things that I could advise to coaches in guiding a junior player towards a difficult time in transition to senior tennis is the first thing, and the rule that they need to accept, that they're not anymore fighting and competing with boys, but rather fighting and competing with men, with a larger and broader spectrum and scale of players and competitors that you need to fight. In my time on the satellite, because I was playing in a couple of satellites, Future, and then later on, obviously, Challenger Tour. The main part is, if you're a successful junior, but even if you're not to get down on yourself. I'm not generally a very positive person, but I remember that the losses that were occurring, and sometimes brutal losses like 6-1, 6-2, 6-0, whatever, were just a part of a journey where we want to arrive and achieve. What happened very often is when I was getting into these losing streaks of several tournaments, I started to lose faith. I wasn't, because of the losses that were happening to me and occurring, I don't want to say I wasn't being very professional about it, but the real professionals in the top of the men's and women's game, it's irrelevant for them if they win or lose. They behave and they conduct themselves in a certain way that you don't see in their faces if they're winning or if they're losing. They're doing every single time their best on and off the court. My problem was not generally on the court, because I was a hard worker, but because of the ego that I developed, I wasn't really, I want to say, a hardcore professional, because I was good enough and talented enough that in the junior days, just by working hard, I was able to be where I was, which is not the case in men's professional tennis. This is the second thing that I wanted to mention. Young players and their coaches need to understand that all of a sudden, from a junior age, these days it's even starting sooner than when I was young, they need to understand that the behavior outside of the court and the professionalism, starting from nutrition, enough rest, recovery, treatments, needs to be on a top level, same like your practices are on the tennis court. This is the second thing that I was struggling most of. I was thinking, if I do my practices, if I do my work, if I practice 4, 5, 6 hours a day, that this will be enough for me to have all of a sudden a glorious senior career, or jump to the senior tour, to the professional tour. Actually, sadly, this is not the case. The coach's job in this journey, I'm not saying that from the moment somebody turns 18 they should start doing this, but gradually leading and guiding their player so that they understand by themselves that only by working hard on the tennis court is not enough. Living, breathing, eating, and playing tennis all goes into one bowl of how somebody needs to, as I mentioned, conduct and behave in order to become the best version of themselves on the professional tour.
Very, very good in response, Janko. I think a lot of insight for coaches and players. Let me ask you, because it appeared to me two different questions when you were talking. One aspect, how you manage emotions, because like fear, sometimes angry, and how you manage, because I know that you put a lot, you are a hard worker, and also you put a lot of passion, you are a great competitor, but also you have to deal with yourself, in that process. How you manage that?
As you probably know, emotions can help us tremendously on the tennis court, because you feel so high on positive emotions but they can also put us down when you feel down on yourself, exactly what I was telling to what was happening with me in my junior career. I am, I am not a big believer, and this may be too hard. This is just me as a person. I'm not a big believer in general optimistic approach. Everybody, if you ask every single person in the world, they think of themselves as realists, meaning that I see the situation how it is really. But this is sometimes way more difficult than it is. My prospect of thinking and dealing with emotions is I'm trying to be as real as possible and as honest as possible to make an evaluation of a current situation, what is actually going on, even if the situation is a complete piece of shit. Let's call it like this. And then it's actually a trick that you play on your mind. You need to be brave enough to accept in every current moment that the situation where you are currently is terrible, is bad. It's not where you want to be. But if you want to achieve an ultimate goal of being of the best version that you possibly can, there is only one way, which is to go, what we say in our country, against the wind. If the wind is blowing in your face and your final destination is somewhere there over the rainbow, the only way to deal with this is to go against the wind. So this is how I try and deal with negative emotions. I try also to control my positive emotions, because normally when it's too positive and too high, you normally try to go down. I'm not saying that, I don't, want to feel happiness or excitement or whatever, but I try to keep this in moderation, because dealing with your emotions on a good particular way can you won't have a lot of ups and downs in terms of, okay, I feel good, I'm playing well, I'm feeling bad, I'm playing terrible. So that's why I am, I accept emotions. I know that they're existing, fear, anxiety, and everything else that especially a young player has to deal on court. But I try to keep them in a closed, I don't want to say box, but in a closed space, and try to pick and take pieces that are suiting to me.
Very good answer, because acceptance is part of to deal with the reality. To deal with the reality is to face in the good way, every emotion. Very, very nice for coaches.
Because generally, an optimistic approach, a continuous optimistic approach will never give you the clarity to realize the current state of situation. This means that this will never give you a chance to improve whatever you're trying to improve. You heard many, many good athletes and coaches saying, I learned much more from a loss than I ever did from a win. But if it's a constant optimistic approach that even if I play terrible and I lose and I don't feel good, if it's constantly optimistic towards an issue or a problem, then you will never have a clear mind to drag and take whatever it's necessary for your progress from a bad situation. Therefore, I'm not saying people should not be as optimistic, but just be more careful in throwing that term around.
Yeah, to deal in that way, they can deal with the energy in a better way,
Yes, exactly.
Yes, sir. Very, very good. Thinking on that, because you were also a great competitor. You are a great competitor in terms of your professionalism, your projects, and as you did like a tennis player. Which kind of resources or particular aspects has to develop the player to be a great competitor in actual times?
I mean, it's a great question, but it's a very broad question. A lot of the competitive nature for very young players is coming from how are we raised from our households, and this is something which is, inserted into us from a very, very young age. You also have a theory, which I don't even want to talk to about because I'm no expert in it, and I don't even want to say my opinion, that there's a lot of genetics involved, meaning that some people or babies or whatever you want to call them, or young kids, are just more competitive than others. And you can say that this is because their father or mother or grandmother was in a certain way. This is one aspect of it. The second aspect is also the maybe hatred is too strong of a word towards losing. You heard so many great champions in different sports saying, I hated losing. I believe even Andre Agassi said this, I hated losing more than I liked winning. So from a coach's perspective, I believe it's very, very difficult to tap into that inner part of a player to insert the will to win or the hatred to lose. This is incredibly difficult, and I don't think a coach can have too much influence into this. You know, the first part from a player needs to be the love towards the game, and if you love the game so much, this is a natural connection with the hatred of losing or love of winning. The coach needs to, I guess, gradually see what is something that is suiting the player, and then investigate that part together with the player. I don't think there is any special technique, or let's put it like this. Maybe there is, not that I am an expert in it. Maybe you can talk to Alberto about this.
Yeah.
A very special technique to insert into the minds of young player the love of winning or the hatred of losing. Some of the players like myself, they just loved competing. I never had, sadly, maybe I would have been a better player if I did, but I never had this crazy love to win or a crazy hatred if I lose. But I had this crazy drive as an ex-player of competing. I could have never forgiven myself if I didn't compete it until the very end. And I think the primary example that we have in our sport right now is Rafael Nadal. If you talk to him if you listen to his interviews after his matches, he is never too excited about winning, but he's never too down on himself. I'm talking about press conference, not the moment when he's lifting a Roland Garros trophy, obviously.
Yeah.
He's never too excited about winning, and he's never too down on himself when he's losing. But he would probably rather commit suicide than not to compete for every single, not point, but ball on the court. And then if you have this culture or ecosystem within the relationship between the coach and the player, this is then gradually and naturally leading towards the love of winning. Because if you're able to insert into your young player or an older player this love of competition, which starts on the practice court, it doesn't start on the match court. It starts on the practice court, and then this is gradually leading towards the love of winning. If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. And I think probably the culture also, no, because Serbian, Spanish people, in our case, Argentinian, I think the cultural environment to accept, you know, with the fighting spirit, you know, to the acceptance of the battle is also a culture, or no? I think I think you are part of that, no?
Yes, I think in I had an Argentinian fitness coach for 10 years, so I know a little bit about the culture, Spanish as well, Serbian. I think, as I said, it's being drawn from generations and generations before us, and I'm not undermining any other nations here, don't get me wrong, but the entrance to a court, this can be a football court, a basketball court, or a tennis court, you're entering a battlefield. You're going into war. Now, this may sound completely crazy, but this competitive drive, this is one of the reasons why these countries over the last several years, even though talking about Serbia or Argentina with not a lot of economical background and political difficulties, they produced great champions, because in the generations from the past, the acceptance of entering a tennis court is you are officially starting a battle, and you want to exit the court as victorious. This is something which I don't think it's closely related only to tennis, but also to all of the sports from these countries.
Yeah, sure. Uh, traveling around in tennis is very important. Which kind of mentality you have to develop in yourself? Because you are sometimes there are many players which are playing quite good on their countries, but immediately when they start to travel around, they don't uh, they don't develop themselves in a better way. Because how you adjust in terms of travel, adapt hotels, meals, different weather, different situations. What are your thoughts about it?
I think the only answer for this question, Fernando, is that you need to accept that this is the way you're going to live. If you're just it's not even good enough to understand that tennis is my job. If you accept that tennis is my job for the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in some cases for longevity purposes, I don't think this is good enough that you have a continuously fresh mindset towards becoming the best that you can be. The only way that the brutal lifestyle that a tennis player has is that you need to accept that this is how am I going to live my life, and hopefully love the way you live, not the way you travel or the way you play. The love towards this way of life is, in my case, the only possible way how somebody can, at least on the top level, achieve their full potential. Because uh, obviously all of us are doing this for a financial recognition reason, but we are obviously all doing this for personal gain and personal success. Some of us are doing this to make, our parents proud, the country proud, or whatever. But this doesn't necessarily mean that the brutal lifestyle in a season which is 11 months long is going to be any easier. There's only so much how much you can draw from that bottle of water, which is all different things and factors that are motivating you. But if from a very young age you accept, and essentially I'm coming back to this word, love this way of life, which I can attest to this. If you come to the top of men's tennis game, it's a beautiful, beautiful life. It's not easy, but it's a beautiful life. It's the only way how in all of the stages of your professional career, movement from even in junior tennis, because maybe they don't travel as much as the professionals, but they still travel 15, 20 weeks a year.
Yep.
Starting from juniors up until, we spoke about this, the transition from junior to professional tennis, middle of your career, hopefully in your later stages, when you get married, find a husband or a wife, get kids. The only way that life doesn't stand in the way of your progress is that, first of all, you accept, and second of all, you love this way of life of constant traveling for the next 20 years of your career.
Very, very good statement, Janko. What about the coaches? Because I want to ask you how coaches have to behave in terms to develop values in the players from junior to senior. Because you did several recommendations in the last answers, but let's say you are talking, because right now in the World Tennis Conference, we have coaches from more than 70 countries. And
oh my God.
let's say you're going to say to them, okay, take care on that, focus on that. Which are your thoughts about it, please?
I think, again, I'm going to start answering this question with a very cliche, something that most of the coaches already heard about this. The love towards what you do needs to go over your financial needs in terms of what are you trying to get from the relationship between the player. If the driving force is, I want to be the best possible coach that I can be, and I will do whatever it takes. It's a very similar mentality in a coach, because I am a young coach and I was a player on tour for 17 years. But I was very surprised to understand how similar the mentality needs to be in order to what I believe to achieve peak performance in any industry, in the coaching industry, in the tennis industry, or in the players industry. Um, my one of my idols in coaching, believe it or not, is Janko Obradovic. He is a basketball coach in Europe, the biggest, one of the biggest coaches in the history of basketball. He won 10 Euro leagues. So the sentence that he's saying often, the biggest authority towards your team or towards your player is the authority of knowledge. If you know something to be true and you're trying to insert this into your team and your player, this is how you gain trust from a player. So the one thing that I would, when we go out of the cliche factor of saying you need to love what you do and you need to accept that you are a part of this, how they call it, traveling circus, irrelevantly if it's a junior or a pro player, never stop learning. This is why I believe a conference like this is tremendous, and I think anybody who loves this sport and or has anything to do with this sport is completely fucking crazy if they are not a part of this conference. This is something which is honestly tremendous. Coming back to my previous point, due to the power of internet and traveling before COVID, there is so much options for young coaches and even older coaches to learn their craft on completely different platforms or ways or anything that they would want. So the second part about the first part about the passion, and the second part is about the thirst for knowledge. Because I believe what I see a lot of even older coaches, but young coaches, they are set in their ways. This is what I do. This is what I believe is true. And they never question themselves due to either ego problems or anything else. I come from a philosophical background, so I always tend to ask questions to myself in terms of, is this what I'm doing good and how can I do it better? So the thirst for knowledge and improvement, because this is an evolving sport and game, is something that either a young or an older coach needs to have in a continuous manner in order to become the best possible coach. I start from myself. I don't want to say I thought I knew everything, but I thought I knew a lot. And after trying to understand how the game is working and spending even a year on tour, I changed my views seriously on certain things because I was not afraid to doubt and question myself. This doesn't mean that you're unsecure, but this is how I believe when you, when you accumulate knowledge through different sources, players, irrelevantly of the level, feel this. They feel, players are generally, this can be a 10-year-old girl or it can be, Rafael Nadal or Novak Djokovic. Players are generally very smart and they understand when you are feeding them the correct information and if this information is actually affecting their game, as opposed to feeding them bullshit just to get a paycheck at the end of the month. This is why the analogy of thirst for knowledge is tremendously important in the long run of you becoming the best possible coach that you can be.
Very, very good. No, I completely agree with you. I think the keep learning process is not depending on the ages. It's depending on the will, of the attitude, like you perfectly say.
The attitude, exactly.
Yeah. Let me change a little bit because we can. I know we can talk for hours.
Okay.
Your knowledge. But this is a presentation of 45 minutes for all the coaches. Let me ask you about another topic which is very important because now you are a very successful coach and businessman.
Okay. I think it's a stretch, but thank you.
No. Let's say, well, it's facts. No, the facts talk it's like we say, acceptance of reality, and you keep learning on that, but you are moving forward on that. How to create a tennis culture in one club, in one academy, because sometimes you have hardware in terms of courts, in terms of facility, but the key is the software, not the hardware, and that's a very important aspect in all over the world.
This is actually something which is the most difficult part in creating the right culture and the right ecosystem in any organization. As you made a very good example and analogy, most of the people can build hardware. Very few people can build proper software for whatever you're trying to do. And this normally, even if you're developing a software for a computer program or a phone, or in this case, a tennis academy, this normally takes time. And the right software normally is being generated better after time is passing, if you're following the right principles and the right way. So I don't, to be honest with you, I cannot say like there's a big secret to it. To me and to the people that we work with, it comes naturally. First of all, the people need to feel that you're completely organic in what you are doing, and that this, in my case, tennis, this is maybe a little bit too hardcore, but it's consuming your life. It's consuming your being. They need to feel, again, this is coming natural for me because this is what I love and do, that outside of your family, this is the most important thing that you're doing in your life. If they're starting to feel that you're doing this, and again, I don't want to stretch too much the financial reimbursement because, I love money like everybody else loves money. I don't think anybody should work for free, and I think everybody should be fairly compensated. But if they're feeling that you're doing everything humanly possible for the organization and for the, in this case, academy or club, then this energy is being spread towards all of the people that you are working with in a particular case. This, for some people, it comes harder, and for some people, this happens more easy. The second thing that I cannot stress enough is trying to surround yourself with people. I don't even want to say with good people. I want to say with people that your instincts are telling you are the right fit for you. Meaning that building up a culture is impossible to happen, first of all, on its own, and it's impossible to be driven by a single person. This person can be the biggest giver of energy, but if the other cells in the organism are not receiving and sending the energy towards the whole organism, which is essentially an organization, then it doesn't matter how strong the top part is. So I would say for somebody who is trying to build an organization, try to be tremendously careful in the screening process and starting collaborations to work with people which you believe are the right fit for you and your organization. I personally am a big, not because I'm a good and honest guy, but I personally believe in people, because I don't believe in people or in coaches or whatever like numbers. Because essentially, if you just say, yes, this coach is good for this month or these 2 months or this year, then we will replace him with somebody else. I don't think that the culture and the ecosystem is being built in a proper way. I know it's a little bit of a romantic approach, but I tend to start working with people which I think in the beginning of the relationship, same like I think in the beginning of my marriage.
Yeah.
I will be married with my wife. This is how I think until the end of time. And I will be working with this person until the end of time. This is then sending a proper vibe and signal that people in the organization, we can start with either the cleaning lady or the head coach in all of our academies, that they belong in this family. Therefore, the energy that they're receiving from the very top is absorbed in a different way and being transmitted to all of the other organs in the body in a different way, rather than just looking at them as a pure number to say, okay, here's a 1-year contract. After that, we ship you off somewhere else. I don't believe this is the right way. If we are not talking about the technical and tactical stuff, we're talking purely about how to psychologically create the right culture, vibe, and ecosystem in any organization. This can be tennis or football or basketball or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are agree on the philosophical concepts, then you can create a systematic approach of the processes. But you are very right. The philosophical concept has to be, the main part rather than numbers and.
It has to be the cornerstone. I'm sure you had this in Argentina. You build your country from the ground floor. And if the ground floor is shaky and not good, normally floor number 5 is going to, not be built in a proper way.
Exactly. In terms of organization, Janko, how to manage parents? Because parents, in terms of development of the player and also in the structure of the organization, are very important. Which are your thoughts about it? How to manage them? How to integrate them?
One of the biggest parts in the, let's call it a myth, which is going around especially the let's call it the coaching industry, either in young players or top players, is that parents are crazy. I hate when I hear this. This is factually not true. I believe that parents can be a very, very important asset in the development and growth of a young player. We're talking generally about young players, because if we talk about somebody that's 30-year-old, normally the parents know how they should or should not behave. So I am always more excited when a player comes to any of our academies, and when I get a feedback or a whatever analysis from all of my coaches saying that the parent is very into the progress of the kid and they want to be involved, as opposed to, yeah, the parent just dropped off the kid and left, and then they will be back in 1 week. So I believe that the involvement of parents and the love, you can obviously be too involved, and we saw many examples where parents are actually not helping the player in being too much involved. But my thing is, if a parent is involved, there is a larger chance that the player who decides to do this will also be involved in the process of becoming a good player. If a parent doesn't really give a shit, normally then the player, because this is the vibe that he's getting in his household, normally then essentially at one point the player will also maybe not really care. It's up to us as tennis experts all over the world to explain to parents which do want to be involved the boundaries until which part we welcome their involvement and until which part we do not. I think the key in this is the first and second meeting with the player and the parent, and then later on with the parent, where you set ground rules as a team. You welcome a significant parent into the family of an organization that is providing the services, and then say, this is our deal. This is how we work. We welcome your involvement. This is what we expect from you. This is what you expect from us. If these, we never had, I mean, this is crazy to say, but because of this approach, we never had any problem with any parent, because the importance of this, of the beginning of the relationship, normally you set your personal or business relationships on the very beginning, the cornerstone. Remember, we spoke about the ground floor. And if this is stable and this is good, there is generally no room for disagreement or error.
Very good. Let me ask you more focused on what you are doing in terms of the business. How is the approach of the Tipsarevic academies and also the new project that you are developing? Probably is a very focused, question, but it's important that for coaches they can learn about your business vision, not only your sport vision.
Yeah. Many years ago, I've decided, even when I was professionally playing tennis, that I want to stay in the industry. This was maybe 10, 12 years ago. I never had dreams to become like a businessman, which is wearing suits and ties and, starting to diversify my funds into whatever, construction or agriculture or any other area of business. Two reasons. Number one, I love what I do. Outside of my family, this is what I live and breathe every single day. And I knew at that point that this will continue even when I stop professionally playing. And second, without sounding pretentious, I believe I'm good in it. I know the industry. I have great people around me, great mentors around me. So I always knew that I would stay in the industry. We built our academy already 9 years ago in a small club with 3 courts. Very soon after that, the academy was full. We opened another academy in Belgrade with 3 courts. Very soon after that, that academy was full, so we opened an additional 9 courts. That was full this spring, and this winter, actually, we started working with another club with 6 courts. So we are growing in at least in my case, very, very nice pace. Internationally, we are 2 years ago, we've opened our first international academy in 3 locations with 27 courts in Shenzhen, China. A year and a half ago, we opened up our second academy in Cancun, Mexico. And by the beginning of spring, we will open 3 more academies in Berlin, Germany, in Cadiz, Andalusia, Spain, and Netanya, Israel. So the main reason for this, what people need to understand, this has nothing to do with the name on the shirt or the fact that I used to be a decent player several years ago. I tend to believe that the main reason why this is happening is because of the systematic approach and the systematic way that we work as a unit. We're not a big organization. In Belgrade, we have around 75, 80 employees, but the snowball effect, which is happening right now, is a product of years of work before in establishing the right ecosystem, surrounding ourselves with the right people. So when the moment of expansion is happening, we are ready actually to deliver. I believe that every single organization in tennis should have their own way, should have their own philosophy. I very often tend to take Football Club Barcelona as an example, where when you go, and this is my general belief about tennis, when you go to Football Club Barcelona, you don't play football how you want to play. You play how the system is telling you, and then within the boundaries of the system, you find your individual qualities. One of the biggest problems in our industry is that if you have 5 tennis courts and you put 5 different coaches, which are sometimes working for the same organization or under the same roof, and you hypothetically have an option to clone the same player on 5 different courts. Very often it will happen that 5 different coaches to a same player will say 5 different things, which sadly, factually may be true, but they don't equal progress because there is no boundaries. How do we actually teach tennis? Now, there are different ways. You have the South American way, the Spanish way, the American way, whatever. There are different schools of tennis, obviously, and there is no one way. I'm not saying that our way is the best, but what I believe for any structure, and this is an advice for young entrepreneurs which are deciding to go to a route to open up a tennis academy, you need to find how does your organization and all of your people and coaches, how are they actually coaching, and what are the keys for a success for a young or an older player, that the whole team is working like a unit towards it. Our thing, what we generally focus on, is my personal obsession and belief that, especially with young players, a tremendous amount of coaches worldwide are underestimating the biomechanics, the importance of biomechanics of proper footwork. Because very often I'm hearing coaches creating and making corrections with players, what is going on and what is happening with our upper body. Relax your wrist, turn your elbow, look at the ball like Rafa, mental problems, mental issues, without even thinking about the ground floor. So my big thing is always that, I'll give you a silly example. If you isolate the best 10 forehands of all time, and you can take Roger and Rafa and Fernando Gonzalez and whatever, Thomas Berdych, or whoever you want to take. The technical execution of playing the ball from the upper body, one guy is playing like this, Roger is playing like this, Juan Martin Del Potro is playing like this. So the technical parts, how you execute a shot, are actually very individual. How does this suit a certain player? But the rules of the biomechanics of footwork, if you isolate, are 70, 80 to 90% exactly the same. And this is going throughout the landscape of what coaches are generally trying to copy. Instead of focusing on something which is essentially copyable, they focus on things which are factually true, but not really important for the progress of a young player. Therefore, in all of our 3 current academies and the 3 which will follow, and hopefully many more which will come, this is what we focus on the most, because I think it's crucial and detrimental for the progress of especially young players.
Well, very, very good statement in terms of create a systematic approach to develop players. I witnessed how you are doing hard work to create a system, and it's producing results in terms of the organization. Congratulations on that. Because you are also talking about future. Let's do a couple more questions, Janko. How you see actually tennis, and how you see the future of the game in terms of players on 10 years ahead, let's say?
Just reverting back on what I said regarding the footwork, Fernando, if you take in which aspect of the men's and women's game, what is the part that was upgraded the most in the previous 10 years? It's actually the movement on court. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that big servers of today, like Kyrgios or, I don't know, Berrettini or Roger, were really serving much better than Goran or Sampras or Krajicek or whatever. I don't believe that the qualities of strokes, I don't really think that whatever Novak's backhand is much better than Andrei's backhand, Agassi's backhand, or Nalbandian's backhand, or somebody who was playing in the past. We can talk about the same about the volley game or the forehand shot. The biggest leap in the upgraded factor of men's game, especially, is the actual movement on court, where you see now guys which are close to 2 meters tall, like Zverev, like Medvedev, like Berrettini, like Juan Martin before. They are moving insane for their height, which was unimaginable 15 years ago. So the biggest leap in men's tennis is not actually the speed of the serve or the speed of the forehand or the amount of spin. It's actually the movement on court. If we talk purely about the technical parts. If we talk about tennis as a sport and we exclude the terrible virus which has hit us all in many different ways, I believe there will be a small dark middle age until the stars of tomorrow assert themselves at least on some level in winning several or multiple Grand Slams. This is generally normal in any industry where Michael Schumacher stopped driving Formula One, or Michael Jordan retired from basketball. Whenever there's, or Tiger Woods stopped, being at the very top, you generally see a small decrease in popularity in a larger scale of things. I believe that something like this will happen for a brief period if Novak, Roger, and Rafa ever retire or they continue winning slams until they're 50. And I believe that the stars of tomorrow, like Dominic or Sasha Zverev or Medvedev or Shapovalov or whoever they are, it will take some time that the international public recognizes them as the future stars of tomorrow.
Very good, very good. Last question. More than a question is a recommendation, because to finalize, like I say, we have coaches from more than 70 countries.
That's insane. That's really insane.
Yeah. Also, we have speakers from 26 countries, which is another concept.
I saw the list. It's really impressive.
Yeah. And let's Janko, please say something like a final recommendation for coaches from all over the world, from your point of view, a key aspect to follow. You did a lot on your presentation, but let's focus on some key points, to remember on that, please.
The main part about being a good coach, outside of the cliche things, which I'm saying is the love towards the game, towards this way of life of being a coach, which is not easy by any means in any level, and the thirst for knowledge, the thirst that you're constantly doubting yourself or trying to become better at what you do. One of the biggest points that I have to advise all, especially young coaches, is asserting your authority in a proper manner with the relationship with either your player or whoever you end up working for. I'm going to give a little bit of a broader answer, if you don't mind. The whole industry is a little bit upside down, because essentially when you're a coach in any other sport, you generally are working or representing an organization which is hiring you. In both cases, it's very similar, that your job position is being dependable on the results that you produce. But in the tennis scenario, very often I am seeing a tremendous amount of coaches because of this analogy. And we can start from the lowest point of somebody getting $10 per hour for the work that they do to the very top of men's and women's game. That coaches are getting disrespected for the work that they do because they're unable to assert themselves as an authoritative figure in the whole landscape of the relationship between the player. I believe, and I told you this, the biggest authority is the authority of knowledge. So the more you know and the more that you are committed to the sport, the less chances and openings you're giving for anybody to disrespect you in any way, shape, or form. But I am pleading young coaches that this part is tremendously important, especially in the very beginning of any relationship, because players feel this. but they only feel it if they recognize your passion and knowledge. This is why these things are very closely connected together. If they don't feel your passion, or if they don't see and feel your knowledge, then the relationship is taking a complete different turn, that the player thinks that they can, and I'm not even talking about disrespecting you, cursing at you, not about this. Just this is then the players, especially younger players, start thinking that they can do almost whatever they want, which is essentially going away from what we said, how do you create a competitive player? It's all very connected, but I believe in the very beginning is the cliche thing about love and thirst for knowledge. But the second, how you say, hurdle, the thing that you have to jump over, is the assertion of the correct amount of authority of yourself as the coach in the relationship that you have with your player.
Very good, Janko. Wonderful statement and insights. In the name of the World Tennis Conference by GPTCA and our institute, we appreciate your wonderful presentation, and we say thank you to you to be part of our conference.
Thank you guys for having me. It was my pleasure and honor.